Hello and welcome to Nightique. Our guest tonight is Burt Case. As we've been preparing for this show, we've procured a few interviews with a few folks that we've been getting ready for use, and the first one that we want to show you from a taping we did a few weeks ago is Mr. Burt Case. Everybody in central Mississippi who watches the news knows Burt, and he is the senior newsman here in the marketplace. And you know, anybody who has come up through the years working in the news business, or in my case the weather business in central Mississippi around the Channel 3 orbit, of course knows and loves Burt. And I can tell you that from the standpoint of getting a start in the business of television and going on the air, I would have to say that the folks at Channel 3 in general were the ones that gave me a chance way back when. And Burt Case was the news director, and he said, okay, put St. Pé on, let him try the weather. So we go way, way back, and we have an insightful, I think, interview with Burt. We find out where his career started and some of the nuances of his career here in Jackson. So I hope that you'll sit back and enjoy this interview with Mr. Burt Case. It's coming up right after these messages. This is Nightique. Stay tuned.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is hand-picked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507.
Well, our first guest today is one of the founding fathers of news and journalism in Jackson, Mr. Burt Case. And Burt, it's a pleasure to see you.
Pleasure to be here, Edward.
I'm happy to have you on as a guest on our new show. And,
my pleasure.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of time, basically. Broadcast journalism.
Not that far now.
The beginning of broadcast journalism in Jackson. Your memory of putting the news together back in the day. Do you remember the time when the news on location shots were done on film?
Oh, Lord, yes. I remember when it was done on Polaroid. When I first started in television news in this market at WJTV Channel 12 in 1965, we actually went out with a Polaroid camera, took a picture of what we were talking about, and had an audio tape recorder, and we would interview people on audio tape, and we would play a piece of the audio tape with the video of the Polaroid camera. And the way we got the Polaroid picture on the air is we took it in the studio and put it up on an easel and had a camera roll up to it and focus on it. Incredibly crude, but that's how it was done when I first started at WJTV Channel 12 in August of 1965.
Okay, now let's jump ahead to 16 millimeter. And that was a process. I can remember.
Well, 16 millimeter We didn't have a sound on film camera at Channel 12 when I started there. And I immediately recognized we somehow had to get a sound on film camera, meaning a camera that could record lip sync, that you could interview somebody and their lips would be synced with what they're saying. That requires a sound on film camera. We had a little silent camera, a little Bell and Howell, that we could go out and shoot 100 feet of silent film. 100 feet of silent film is 2 minutes and 48 seconds. That we could take pictures, moving pictures of something silent. But Ken Parks, who was the production manager for that station, and myself, went to the general manager and to the part owner of the company and said, look, we so desperately need a sound on film camera here for our news operation. We'll go to the bank and get a loan and buy one. We know where a guy's got one used that he will sell us. A guy named Leo Moore here in Jackson, Moorco Drug and Photo Shop, had bought one to shoot the civil rights movement and didn't meet with much success selling his film to the networks. They brought their own when they came in here and covered it. But we could get one cheap. He wanted $5,000 for it. And Ken and I were willing to go to the bank and borrow the $5,000 and sell the news film to the television station. And we finally embarrassed them into buying us a sound on film camera that way. They realized that, you know, there's something wrong here, that these guys are willing to go to the bank and borrow the money.
And then when 60 millimeter finally came around,
yeah,
the process was to shoot the video out in the field, or shoot the film, come back into the darkroom, process the film, and get it on the air in time for the news.
Exactly. It had to go through a lengthy process, you know, being processed just like the old still pictures went through chemicals. The difference was it went through vats of chemicals, you know, down through it this way and down through it this way and just wind its way through. It'd take about, it ran 100 feet, like I say, it was 2 minutes and 48 seconds. You'd shoot no more than 400 feet, you know, because, you know, that's just a lot of film, and you'd have to sit and wait for it to process. Take about 45 minutes to an hour to run it through the machine and get it out.
Well, then came tape, and the big development was the 3/4 inch tape. I guess that was, tape came, and then the
That's
film
correct.
went away. I remember that was a big transition. That was a big thing.
Big transition. Jackson was one of the last markets in the country to convert from film to videotape. At WLBT, they didn't really do it till about 1981. 3/4 inch.
I remember.
Videotape.
I remember, because I was there with you at the time.
Yes, 1981.
I can remember when I started there, we were doing it on film. It was like making a movie every day, making
That's right.
movies because you were processing film. But when the tape came, it was quicker, easier.
No processing.
No processing. Shoot it and you could air it. Big,
Shoot it,
big
go
thing.
straight onto the air if necessary.
Right. You know, the transition that occurred during that time, let's say from the late 70s in the early 80s, when I came to Channel 3 and started in television, just prior to me joining Channel 3, a big transition had occurred. It was the change from Lamar Broadcasting to TV3 Incorporated, I think, which Dr. Aaron Henry was the head of that corporation. Can you tell us, I know you were there at the time, in my opinion, that was a pivotal moment in broadcasting, not only here in the South, but nationwide, some of the things that occurred there.
It was a national story. It's in the textbooks to this day that they teach the WLBT case. WLBT lost its license to broadcast over the airwaves for violation of the fairness doctrine. And the specific violation was failure to cover the events of the black community in this area, in its coverage area. A group from New York was able to prove that they did not serve the black community as well as they served the white community. And the issue went all the way up to the full FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, which granted them a license to continue after the protest. But that was appealed to the United States Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia, which overturned the decision and took the license away from WLBT and gave it to a biracial group that operated it on an interim basis. It was called Communications Improvement Incorporated, CII, which had Dr. Henry as a part of it, and a number of other very prominent black leaders and white leaders in this community. Kenneth Dean, Reverend Kenneth Dean, was the president of the board of directors. And they took over the station in 1971 and operated it till 1980. And it was the first station in the country to lose its license for such, an issue of not covering the black community in its coverage area. And yes, it was a landmark case that to this day is studied by broadcast scholars and is in all the textbooks.
It really was a pivotal moment because for the first time, it seems like the news coming out of Jackson, Mississippi, was unfiltered, coming out from the parent company's perspective, unbiased. There was no slant to the news. It seems like that was the moment when that occurred. I don't know.
It was the moment for the first time that you really saw a lot of black people on the air.
Mm-hmm.
CII was committed to covering issues in the black community, mm-hmm. putting black anchors on the air,
right.
putting black reporters on the air. And you got to see the black people in this community along with the white people,
right.
which had not been the case before. All you saw was white.
Considering you had 50% of the population black, it was really...
38% of the state is black.
Right.
And roughly 38% of the coverage area of the Jackson television stations is black. But to completely ignore 38% of your audience, it's just a no-brainer that was not going to continue, that somebody somewhere would challenge it and be successful. And Dr. Henry's group happened to be the one that was in fact successful in convincing. The Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia was the one that took the license away.
And of course we had, I know you remember, Mr. William Dilday was the general manager.
First black general manager of a network-affiliated television station in the United States.
Hard to believe, and that was 1980, 81. Hard to believe that would have been the case.
That's
the first in America.
That's true.
And in Jackson, Mississippi.
That's correct.
Of all things, it was very
progressive environment.
Yeah.
I was hired by Bill Dilday. I was hired as news director at WLBT Channel 3 by Bill Dilday in 1974.
And of course, Mr. Dilday is still in the community, still doing work in the communications business today.
Still very much at it.
And still, I know I always looked at him as a sort of a surrogate father in a way, just like I look at you in a way all these years, because we grew up and he was the general manager. It really was at that time, my memory of Channel 3, it was kind of like a family, wasn't it?
It was.
It really was. And even to this day, when we see each other, all of us who worked there during those years, you can feel it even still through today.
I interviewed Bill Dilday the night Chokwe Lumumba died as the mayor of Jackson here. He was a supporter of Chokwe Lumumba, and he was kind enough to give me an interview down at City Hall. I did a live broadcast from down there. And yes, Bill Dilday is very much with it and in the community and active and a real smart guy.
Yes. Okay, well, we're talking to Mr. Burt Case about the history of Jackson broadcasting, and you're watching Nightique here from Jackson. We'll be back after this.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is hand-picked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507.
Welcome back to Nightique. Mr. Burt Case. I guess everybody in the area statewide knows Burt Case as being, I guess, the dean of broadcast journalists here in our state, and for so many years since the mid-60s. You've been covering the biggest stories in the state.
I've covered every major story in Mississippi since August of 1965.
Okay.
Either as a reporter, anchor, or news director.
Give us a rundown. Tell us a couple of the big stories that come to mind, the bigger stories.
Well, no question, the biggest story I've ever covered is Hurricane Camille. 1969 hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast with 238-mile-per-hour winds. It smashed the coast from Ocean Springs to the mouth of the Pearl River, a distance of some 50 miles. The coast was just virtually obliterated by that monster storm. Now, of course, we've had one worse since in Katrina. It wasn't worse than Camille when it came ashore. Katrina was only a Category 3 because it had been slowed down by Louisiana as it came ashore. But it was a much bigger, more devastating storm. Katrina covered the entire Gulf of Mexico, whereas Katrina in Camille was a tightly wound, smaller storm that was from Ocean Springs to the mouth of the Pearl River. But I was down there that night, survived it in the Buena Vista Hotel. Did reports by telephone as late as 11:30 that night, and the peak of the storm was about midnight. But we lost our phone lines at 11:30 and couldn't get out anymore. I thought I was going to die.
Did you?
I didn't think I would ever survive that. I was very convinced that the hotel was going to come crashing down on us. It did not. It survived it. All the windows were blown out. The front door was blown out. We slept on mattresses that had been dragged down from the rooms upstairs and put in the ballroom and the dining area of the second floor of the Buena Vista. But we survived. The old building didn't go down. I remember when the storm was really getting severe, when it blew the front door out in the lobby. Bob Bullock, my cameraman, and I got into a discussion about what we were going to do to survive if the building came down. And Bob said, well, I'm just going to move to higher ground. I'll just go out to my car, which is behind the hotel, and that's higher ground. I said, but Bob, the hotel will be on top of your car if it comes down. Well, he hadn't thought about that. And he said, well, okay, what's your bright idea? And I said, well, I've thought about tying myself to this big oak tree out in front of the Buena Vista. We've got all kind of wire here, big thick wire that I think would hold both of us tied to that tree. Bob said, that's crazy. We'd drown. And of course, Bob was right. As it turns out, the tide was 22 feet at the Buena Vista, and we would have in fact drowned if we had tied ourselves to the tree. But thank God the building didn't come crashing down on top of us.
Well, what is it about journalists, yourself through these years, a great example, putting yourself in harm's way to cover a story, whether it be that or many other instances?
Well, you just often have to do it. You can't allow the danger of a story to drive you away from that story. I mean, it was dangerous to ride down the streets of Fayette, Mississippi in 1965 covering a civil rights march because the Klan didn't like you being there and would ride by in their pickup trucks with 30-06s in the back window. It was very dangerous to do that.
Okay.
But you had to do it. I mean, it was happening. It was a major story. And you have to go out and get yourself involved and see firsthand what's happening and report on it.
Okay, now let's talk about that. You saw firsthand, you covered those civil rights issues that were festering here in
Absolutely.
the state. And the national spotlight was also on it. It was from a societal standpoint, it was another pivotal moment. And it was happening, right? This was ground zero, more or less.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think? I mean, after having lived through that and covered it, segue from then to today, your perspective today, has true progress been made in that area? Has it been superficial? Has it been real? What is your perspective on that?
Oh, absolutely. Huge progress has been made. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a lot more to do, because there is. We still have problems with racial prejudice in this state. There's no doubt about it. Black people are still discriminated against. But nothing like what they were back in those days of the 60s and 70s and 80s. There's a huge change in this state. Mississippi has the highest number of black elected officials of any state in the United States, thanks primarily to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And black folks can vote and can go out and select their own leaders.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is handpicked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507.
Well, we've segued from some of the major stories and the various technological breakthroughs you've seen through the years. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to go on the air back in 1981.
I taught you how to do a weathercast.
Yeah, you actually...
on a magnetic board with little triangles that would stick to the magnetic board you'd make a front with.
Yeah.
And a big H for a high and a big L for a low.
Right. And back in those days, there were no electronic, there were no computers doing the graphics either. We had to do
But I remember how you personally would go out to the National Weather Service and you introduced us to chroma key weather, like every television station in the United States now uses, where somebody's out in front of a green wall like this and they are chroma keyed over a map that is electronically there. There's no map on the wall that you see. You turn and you see a green wall, but electronically the viewer at home sees a map. Edward St. Pé did that, I remember, in 1981. You went out to the National Weather Service and got that frame, that one frame of map, and physically brought it down to WLBT and stuck it into a chroma key environment, got out there in front of it and did the weather. And that's the way every weatherman in the country does it today. You were way ahead of your time, Edward.
Thank you, Burt, and I appreciate you very much. And good luck with your new position at Channel 16.
Love working there. It's a great place to work. Very, very dedicated people. We've got a general manager who's a former news director, who's a former on-air personality himself. Stuart Kellogg I'm talking about. Makes all the difference in the world to work in an environment where you've got a news director who's come up through the ranks and has become the general manager.
Very rare.
He understands the news business, and Stuart Kellogg does.
Very rare.
Yeah,
And
very rare. And we have a wonderful news director, a young black guy by the name of Ben Hart, who's just smart as a whip and knows what to do. He's worked in New Orleans, he's worked in Sacramento as a producer before becoming a news director here. You just don't know how fortunate we are to have people of that caliber running a television station in Jackson, Mississippi.
Burt, thank you for being with us.
Yes, sir.
And we
My
hope
pleasure.
to see you soon. And good luck with the new position. And we know you'll do great. And good luck for many, many years ahead.
I'm enjoying it.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is handpicked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope that you'll join us every night at 10 p.m. here on JSU TV. That's Comcast Channel 14. Please tell a friend about our show, Nightique, here on JSU TV, Comcast 14. I'm Edward St. Pé. Good night.